Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real People, Real Stories Raw. This evening, we have a guest in the house. She is coming in live from Bali. I'd like to welcome Bibi Gretzer to the studio. Welcome, Bibi.
Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So I feel like there's a piece of the show missing right now, and that is, in fact, Debbie is under the weather, um, and she is with us in spirit. She is with us. She's just not with us in the studio, but she is here. She is resting in bed, and she says, "I wish I could be there. I got knocked out with a terrific cold or flu. Thank you both for showing up. Someone tonight needs to hear your message, BB," is what Debbie is saying. And so perhaps Debbie can moderate the show, not in the studio, but part of the show. And so I want to again welcome you to the studio and to the show this evening. Right now, it is Christmas Eve day for you. It's about, I think, 10 a.m. or so.
For me, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. 10 a.m.
Right.
Yeah. Morning in Bali.
So I know you posted the show. It's live coming in on your stream as well. If your guests, anyone in your community and your friends or family, the same here with Debbie and I. If I want to acknowledge and thank those that join us live or on replay. If you hear something that you like or love, please feel free to hit the button. And if you have any questions or comments or anything that you can resonate or resonates with you, feel free to just share it in the comment section. This is a conversation not just between Bibi and I, but also with those of you that are with us live and on replay. And so, Bibi, I just met you. It feels like we just met just a few days ago, a couple of 24 hours ago. We're friends on Facebook, and for some reason, your feed popped up on my page, and it caught my attention for two reasons. One is because it appeared as though you were lacking clothing. Very eloquently, a photograph very respectfully shot of you, but still it was unusual to see you without clothing on. And then secondly, the message when I glanced past your picture and I started to read what you had posted, I was blown away. And I then raced through that post and I scrolled down to read ones that came before that. And the story was just it just hit me so close to my own self and my own story that I was like, I've got to reach out to you. I have no idea what part of the world you're coming in from. I looked up your profile and I was like, okay, we can do this. And I reached out to you and I invited you on the show and here we are. And there's been a few conversations in between that got us to this point. But without further ado, I'd like to invite you, first of all, to say that you are in a safe zone here with me. You are in a safe space. And if there's anything that comes up for you that you're uncomfortable with, if I should ask, all about boundaries, and you could let me know, I'm just not comfortable answering this question or going there in this moment. And I will obviously honor you and respect you in this moment. And so I just want you to know you're in a safe space with me this evening and with Debbie. And so I'd like to invite you to share your story where you'd like to begin, and we'll just let it unfold in the flow.
Beautiful, Jay. Yeah, I want to share how much gratitude I have for being here and for we shared a little bit about like each other's stories and everything that you bring through this and the opportunity that you are giving so many more people, especially around Christmas now, where there's, I think, a lot more of this energy, this unhealthy energy going around. But in general, also like the contribution that you're making for this show is beautiful. And so I'm so glad to be here and share my story and a little bit more in a way people hopefully might see themselves in it and kind of resonate and find their own healing in some areas. Yeah, so I'm here in Bali, and you're right about the post that I started posting last week with um, pictures with not so many clothes on, because the posts were called "The Naked Truth," and it was really for me about going deeper than I have ever before in terms of what I want to share and how I can reach people's hearts and how I want to bring that across. Realizing that real healing and real resonance can only occur if I'm no longer afraid or ashamed to actually start communicating the story in a way that is truly authentic and real, and maybe more naked than yeah, other people would tell it, I guess, or that I have shared it before. And yeah, it's been interesting so far, like the feedback that I received and what it brought up, and there are definitely some dynamics um, that already kind of like have me in the awareness that it's the right thing to do, and that it's a journey through healing from shame on every level in a way. And so through that, there is still healing occurring. And so coming back to what I shared in my story, I think the first step to recovery is awareness. And awareness started sinking in quite early in some ways, that something was off in my life, that something was off in my journey. I was about 14 when I started developing eating disorders, and it started with bulimia initially. And the funny thing was that even though, yeah, I knew it was dangerous, it kind of like felt like I needed to somehow use on something, because I didn't know what to do with all this stress and emotions and this internal turmoil, and like not being able to communicate with the outside world what was going on inside of me. And so that felt like a real release and a real tool that I could use in order to find some kind of release. And it was very early on, like maybe 3 months in, that I realized that I couldn't get out of this anymore myself, and I was seeking for help. And since then, the journey just unfolded, as in like I received help, but actually just created more and more stress in my family, which is quite typical for codependent dynamics in a way, where, you know, that I felt kind of like the black sheep in the family. There was a lot of blame and shame going on for actually doing this to the family, instead of coming together in a process of communication and finding out what actually happened and what is going on. And so I was really interested in healing from a really early stage on. I think that the way I've experienced myself since childhood, and the way my personality type still is, it's like there's a real curiosity for inquiry and for truth, and for looking what's underneath it, and for looking for alternatives in a way. And maybe that in itself was like really stressful for a family like mine, where that was just not what anybody was used to or capable of. And so my escape to healing in a way was traveling. I left Austria when I was 18 and started just like going far away, and realized that there are other worlds out there. That's when I got in touch with meditation the first time, and kind of like, I think more my spiritual side and my more spiritual being. And on that spiritual journey, I became addicted in a way, or like my new religion, my savior was the ocean. That kind of helped me through my recovery for a really long time, as it felt like being in the water was like being in the church for me. It was very mindful. Nina, are you still there, or did I lose you right now?
All right, looks like
In that place, and you shared that you were in a situation with your ex-wife, or you would have died together. And that was very much like this. Like, yeah, we would have surely died together. Would we have stayed together? And the sad or the tragedy of the story was that he eventually took this decision anyway, and to take his own life.
Mm.
And I was kind of left and continued my journey that I started totally awakening, like, yeah, in a very, very different magnitude and way. And since then, nothing has been the same. As in, like, the last couple of years were purely focused on wholehearted connection, authenticity, spirituality, recovery in many ways. I mean, you mentioned 12 steps, Coda, Al-Anon. I went to Sex, Love, SLA, yeah, for about a year, and I did the steps there, and just since then, I'm just like really curious to learn more and more about what tools are out there to raise my awareness on in my consciousness on other levels, and to experiment, yeah, with new ways of being, and to kind of continue that journey, I guess. So that's the awareness part. I think to that, I want to add that for me, I mean, I mentioned codependent, like I mentioned the food addiction at the beginning, and then I mentioned all these unhealthy relationships and this dependency with a person that was innately unhealthy. He was an alcoholic and addicted to medical drugs and sex and all sorts of things. But the real addiction underneath, and the root for me of it all, well, definitely it's a lack of spirituality, that I didn't have that understanding, that I was trying to control life all this way. And definitely very shame-based. Kind of like I'm still uncovering layers and layers of that feeling of I'm not good enough. And yeah, in my experience, this innate shame and not feeling worthy in a way had me just take a lot of wrong decisions or actions that were kind of mirroring this belief that I'm not worthy, and that I need to make sacrifices, and that I need to fix other people, and kind of like coming from that place. Does that make sense at all? Yeah.
Oh my, it's like, when I read some of your writing, your blogs, be it May, it just hit my soul, because there was that immediate connection. We hadn't talked, and we didn't need to. I just knew I knew you. I felt your pain. I felt the struggles. I identified with as much as I was able to capture it in the moments that I invested the time to read some of your writings, that we have so much in common. And we probably could spend hours, because I know that's what I had to do, in my recovery period, spend hundreds of hours in 12-step meeting rooms to begin the healing process, because I was so I was emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually broken by the time I hit my bottom, that I remember saying early on, when I raised my hand in meetings, and I'd say, the next stop for me was, I was at the last stop. The next stop for me was death. There was no more, there was no more stops. The next stop was the ocean. I was going to go down. And what's interesting too is when you said that so much of your healing that was taking place was at the ocean, is where it all began for me. When I got released from the hospital due to the physical medical diagnoses that had plagued myself at that point, my being, 2 days post being released from Sinai in Los Angeles, I walked into my first Al-Anon meeting ready to surrender everything. And the second thing I did was I found the ocean. I moved to an ocean community and I started showing up every single morning to two places, an Al-Anon meeting and the ocean. And I did that for 2 solid years, every single day. And if I missed a day, it was because I couldn't make it. But other than that, I was there religiously. Um, and so I understand the power of the ocean. I mean, that's where my healing unfolded. That's where I finally made, for the first time in my life, a spiritual connection with a power greater than myself, which is God for me. And it's where I learned how to pray, how to meditate.
No.
I learned how to I guess I rocked her world. And she's coming back in. Are you there?
Yeah.
I learned how to begin to take care of myself for the first time in my life. Because up until that point, I was 100% vested and invested in other people, places, and things. If it wasn't my mom as a child growing up, it then became my wife of almost 30 years. And if it wasn't my wife, it was my kids I was in codependent relationships with. If it wasn't my kids, it was even my clients. It was everybody except me. And I had no idea I never understood what it could feel like to feel good for myself in a healthy way. I only knew how to self-soothe myself with unhealthy addictions. And I had multiple, I believe I had 6 different addictions that I was managing in a very covert way. But my main focus was on everybody else through my codependent behavior. And so, yes, that's the long answer. Do I resonate? There is nothing that you have said that I'm shaking my head no on.
Well, I had tears in my eyes during your share, and I think it was the part of the ocean and like this power greater than yourself and fully. Like the ocean is such a powerful vessel to bring this power across in ways beyond my imagination, for sure. And that's when I had my first spiritual awakenings, and by far, and still have. And interestingly enough, I there's something that I'm working towards, as I believe that our relationship with the ocean is quite narcissistic, and the way we treat the ocean is kind of like, you know, there's some kind of awkwardness or codependency going on. And we take so much and don't really appreciate the gifts that it has for us. And then you were sharing more about, you know, how you were, like using and fixing everybody else, so you didn't need to face what was going on inside you, and that's really all that is. It's so much easier to put my attention on everything outside, including, you know, environmental conservation. That was also a part of my codependency, as in like, oh, I want to save the world, right? Before I even look at or can take care of myself. A trait that I observe in many people who are dearly concerned about the world, and it's for me not until shadow work occurs, and until I'm facing my own shadows and my own hearts of the whole, as in like everything that is going on in this world that I feel mad about or that I judge, are actually things that I'm very much capable of in myself. And I realized that I needed to yeah, deeply look at all my darkness and my shadows in order to free myself from the hatred I had towards the world in many ways. So that's and that allowed me to not have to fix this whole through others and through being able to show up to myself and for myself foremost.
Did I hear you say a hole? You had to fix a hole. Could you share a little bit more about what do you mean by that? What are you referring to?
Yeah. I call it kind of, yeah, like I think they're stars, like the black holes in the universe, right? These like energy centers that just suck energy and grow from taking on energy from around. And I feel that the part of like I'm not enough and like sitting in my darkness actually is this black hole, as in like, whoa, I need all sorts of things outside of myself to have me feel better and enough and happy or whatever. And it's like this hunger for more that is endless and bottomless and will just continue sucking in everything and taking down everything unless um, I'm in touch with the root and actually coming back to self-love and unconditional self-love. I hope I explained that in the right way, but yeah, for me, the more I just allow, the more I allow even the darkness or even, yeah, just sit with this feeling without taking action, the more I just allow myself to be seen in this feeling and to see myself and be seen by others and to kind of like have other people poke through the walls and the embarrassment of this like monster or black hole, the more I can just, yeah, be with it. And the smaller it gets, the less needy it is.
I asked because I thought that's what I heard you say, and I just finished. I was just interviewed on a show a couple of hours ago, and so I was sharing my story, and I mentioned the black hole um, because we shared that in common. I didn't know what it was that I was feeling my whole life inside of me until I started my own recovery work, and it was explained to me exactly what I had always felt and what I had always tried to fill myself with, and and so I had a very new understanding that I had in fact that same feeling within myself, and so I that's what I had, and what happened for me, BB, was that as I continued my healing work, and it's interesting because when you're in the rooms of 12-step rooms, I refer to it as being in recovery. And for me, because I took it really seriously, because for me it wasn't about just trying to fix relationships. It was do or die. I knew that if I didn't figure out how to live life differently and what I had to do to change my behavior in all aspects of my life, that I was going to die. So it literally was do or die. So I took it. Became my full-time job. It became my new, let's say, not obsession, because it was so needed. It was so required. It was that I had spent 21 years in therapists' offices, and I was prescribed meds, and nothing helped. Not even the meds at full prescription dosage was enough. Then I had to give me more meds for breakthrough anxiety, and all of the self-soothing techniques that I had with all of the addictions still wasn't filling up that hole, that emptiness inside, that loneliness inside, and not even having a wife, not even having three beautiful sons, was enough to feel the pain. Ultimately, it's the whole is it's an emptiness, it's a loneliness, it's wounds and traumas and pain that was in the depth of my soul, my true being, myself. And so once I started to understand that the only gateway to healing was through self-care, and people talk about self-care meaning going to the gym a couple times a week or getting their nails done and getting a massage once a month and maybe going to a 12-step meeting once a week.
You forgot the facial. Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't going to be enough for me. I needed way more. I needed to get my butt to a meeting every single day of the week so that I could break myself of that most powerful addiction. And whether it be smoking, whether it be a workaholic, a food addiction, codependency, sex addiction, I had it all. But I will share this right now is that through the recovery work that I did was the gateway to healing. And through the healing process, I no longer have a black hole in my soul. My hole is gone, and are my addictions. They are gone. I have no more cravings, and I live in a space of inner peace today, and a very strong space of humility and gratitude for the healing that I have accomplished. But I could tell you that it wouldn't have unfolded for me if I had not taken my recovery work that seriously. But here's where the hope is. Hope for me, the acronym is healing our perspective every day. And I know you know all about acronyms for words. Fear of false evidence appearing real, or forgetting everything's all right. It's another one for fear. But hope for me is healing our perspective every day. And what that means is that I've got to do the work. No one can do it for me. No one can fill that hole for me. No one can give me or bring me happiness. No one can make me happy. Happiness is an exterior. For me, it's a fleeting emotion that comes and goes. For me, I much rather live in what I refer to as the inner peace. Because when I have inner peace, I'm then able to live and feel joy and bliss and humility and gratitude and love and kindness for myself, and most importantly for myself, so then I can give it away in a healthy way to other people that are deserving and worthy of it. Because not everybody is. And that's where we have to learn how to filter out, toxicity and remove toxicity from our world.
I resonate with everything you shared. Yeah, totally. So what I heard you speaking towards was accountability and self-responsibility, right? Which is kind of the next level after awareness. It's about being accountable for my own feelings and for my own black hole in a way, and for my own behavior, and just showing up for my own self-responsibility. And that was a really challenging process in some ways, as I had to come out, and there were still layers this year actually that were hiding. I had to come out of being a victim in all of this, as in whoa, I'm I'm the victim of all this bad relationships that happened, and it was all about what the other person did to me, and what life did to me, and what my family did to me, and how the world is shit, and all this. I hear that so much in people, this victim thinking, and it's really something that you shared afterwards. Happiness comes only from within. And it for me was the next level after learning more about the 12 steps and sitting in the rooms for about 2 years on a daily basis. I came across the 3 principles. And the three principles.
Sydney Banks?
More.
Sydney
Yeah.
Banks.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so you know Dickon Bettinger?
No,
Okay.
no.
I only
Interesting.
ask because he's been on my show a couple of times, and he's a teacher and mentor of the three principles.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I'll go on with your story. I'll share more of mine afterwards. I apologize for interrupting you.
No, great. I love it. Yeah, synchronicity. So, the three principles, I mean, there's a lot more to share, but the only thing that I want to kind of speak towards is what it hit home for me was that my reality is created inside out. And that changed everything for me. Like that insight was like, oh, wow. So it's not about whatever happens around me impacts the way I feel, but it's actually whatever I'm thinking and what is in my nature and how I perceive life based on my thoughts. This is kind of like crossing my emotions. And that started giving me an empowerment that I didn't have before. And yeah, it's not always easy to stay kind of like fully accountable to that. I'm fully aware of that. There were definitely layers, yeah, in many aspects, like where this kind of victim thinking wants to come back, and I'm just reminded that I'm always the creator of my own reality, and learned so much more about that, and to really own my own power. By surrendering in a way to the universe, right? I think that's the interesting part, that we are actually, well, how would I say that I'm in a way godly divine energy myself, and it's kind of like being more in balance between this human part that has all the imperfection, and where like I feel ashamed for all this, and like and struggle with emotions, and the allowing in me that has me connected with everything that is greater than myself, and to kind of come into the awareness that thought and this human part is a human part, and it's just part of reality the way it is, and not more and not less than that. So the seriousness changes, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We got introduced to the three principles and went to a retreat, a weekend retreat that Dickon put on with a couple of other teachers of the three principles, and Dickon co-wrote a book with Natasha. I don't know her last name offhand. It's called Coming Home. It's a very simple read. It's all on the three principles, and he's a beautiful soul himself. He's been on my show a couple times. I'll send you the links to the shows that he did. We just did one maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago together. Cool. On relationships, on healing relationships, but applying the three principles.
Right.
So here we are connected in another way through a tool. And it's a beautiful thing when we start to have the awareness, as you mentioned it, and understand that we truly have all the answers within us. And part of it is just slowing down our thinking. Yeah. The 60,000 or so thoughts that go through our minds in a 24-hour period with distraction, realizing that once we're off to the races and we're out of the moment, to bring ourselves back in through healthy distractions, which is through just slowing down enough to listen for the answers from within us.
Yes. That's the godly part that I'm speaking towards. That's what I meant. Exactly that.
The answers never came from my thinking. The only thing my thinking did was get me into obsessive thinking and unhealthy behavior for relief of the thinking. What self-care has done for me, the type of self-care that we have talked about here tonight, through prayer and meditation, and through walking and then riding along the beach line, the coastline, and music therapy is a big part of mine as well, and writing and journaling is a huge part of my healing process. Is that there's so many tools available to us, But the self-care, like you said, codependency is the root addiction of all other addictions. I believe that self-care um, is the root antidote for healing our minds, bodies, and souls. And I share this on my live feeds quite often. Self-care for me was the gateway to first learning how to like myself. And eventually I fell in love with myself. And that was the hook. I got hooked on that. That was the antidote for filling the hole and living a life of contentment today. Now, it doesn't mean that life is easy. It doesn't mean that life is not complex, because we still have to be, we can't live in isolation. We still need people to be healthy. Yet, people struggle. And so we're affected by other people's energy. We're affected by other people's behavior. And we're just affected by people, places, and things. So the key is how do we navigate through that, not get sucked into the vortex of the low vibration, as David Strickle, a friend of mine, would say, and stay in a high vibration, which is basically high emotion. It's through mindset. It's understanding how powerful the words that we speak are. The words become our reality. And so it's just, there's so much out there. The saying, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. Have you heard that one?
You said it before the show, actually.
Yeah. It's just like, I had no idea. I love when you said about we have to hold ourselves accountable. It's like, I have no problem today acknowledging the mistakes that I made, the lessons that came through those mistakes, but the pain and the behaviors that were hurtful to myself and to people in my life. And it wasn't my wife or my sons. It was friends. It was acquaintances. It was clients. It was employers. It was strangers that I'd meet in the parking lot at a red light. It just didn't matter. I mean, I wasn't a good person. I was a good person. My soul was always good, but my behavior was really bad.
Yeah.
And today I can hold myself accountable, like you said, and understand that when I make a mistake or I hurt somebody's feelings or I'm not happy with my own behavior, I can apologize and I could hold myself accountable with the understanding that behind the apology there's got to be a changed action on my part. Because if I just apologize and I just say I'm sorry, and then 3 hours later or 3 days later or 3 months later I repeat the same behavior, and I haven't changed my behavior, and I'm right back to hurting someone. That's part of healing. That's part of doing the work that we're doing right now. Is that it's not just saying we're sorry, but it's holding ourselves accountable, as you just shared so eloquently.
Yeah. Well, it's the pathway to an awakening for me. Like accountability and self-responsibility is the pathway to a spiritual awakening process. And I heard you saying something about self-love. That's kind of the spiritual awakening that I'm referring to. As in, the more I'm accountable and change my behavior, and through that my environment reacts differently, I begin to feel differently more and more so. And the first time, the first real profound awakening for me was through the three principles, when I realized that the drama in my head was kind of merely created because I didn't feel good enough, and because there was like so much judgment about how I'd lived my life and how I'd treated other people and how badly I had shown up in my behaviors. And my thing was, that's kind of probably, I guess, a more shameful part, but it's also an important part to speak towards, as I had many affairs and was kind of the person that other people had affairs with, right? And that's like the impact of that on families, on my own life, and the lack of self-love towards myself is quite profound. It really came more from how my own parents handled their divorce, where there was another woman involved, and I kind of recreated that story. And so there was like a lot of this not enoughness and shame that I've referred to, and eventually I just realized that behind the intensity of thinking in my head was this thought, I'm just not good enough. And I'm like, what is if I just, instead of like trying to show myself how good I am, I just drop all this and change the thought. And that was the first time when I started feeling intense self-love and kind of like real acceptance of everything that I am and how I've shown up. And it was, yeah, it was profound to kind of like have that accountability for myself, to keep on forgiving myself and asking for forgiveness, and being honest and more genuine and more graceful with other people, and being more aware of the impact that my behavior and my thoughts have on other people. Yeah, that's just the realization that I didn't even need another person to feel the sensation of love, that it would just happen inside out. And I've undergone through many of these moments in my life ever since, as in just realizing or feeling, how great it is to hang out with myself, and how I'm in this with me, like it feels like even when things are hard, you shared something around life is still complex, and there are relationships, and like you don't want to live on your own in a way, or isolated, and you still like want to relate to other people, and that creates dynamics, because relationships always kind of show us things about ourselves, and there's more learning and more interaction and change happening, and despite that, or regardless of any kind of like chaos or complexity in my life, I always come back to this. Wow, I'm so glad I'm in this body, I'm in this thinking, I'm in this lifetime with myself. And it's like, wow, this feels so good. I'm loving this life. I'm loving being with myself. And like, I'm in this until I die. I totally got this.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
So how do you like the home that you've set up for yourself today?
Well, it's not perfect, I tell you that. And I love it. It's a lot of progress, just looking back. How it's been even only 4 years ago, it's like, oh my God, it's profoundly different. There's a lot of openness. I live my life with a very open heart. And that is interesting because it means that I need a lot less protection. I'm a lot less scared of having other people see me, which gives me the ability to be very open.
Isn't it? Can I stop you right there? I just want to interject. I find that so interesting, because how it was before was you were so concerned about what other people thought, to some extent, that you were so guarded because you were afraid that if they knew how you really felt, or how you really thought, or who you really were, you may not be liked. You may not be loved.
Yeah.
And how ironic, how beautiful it is that when you begin to have the awakening and understand that true authenticity and true vulnerability is when you start to share your naked truth, as you have. And what you start to understand, and when I say you, I'm really speaking for me, my experience has been, when I made the conscious decision to start to share my healing journey in a very public way, that it would cause some conflict within existing relationships. It would cause some strong discomfort for family members and friends. I would have family members and friends exit out. and new ones exit in. But through that experience, it didn't stop me from saying, time out, this is not good for me. I'm going to retreat back and go be more private about it. I'm okay with the fact that, there's a saying, and this saying, it's none of my business what you think of me. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
And that truly has been how I live my life today, meaning I listen to only one voice, and that's the voice within me. I don't, if I was to listen to all of the voices of the people that are in the circle of my life that have advice and suggestions on the choices that they think I ought to be making in every aspect of my life,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be alive today.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I have no doubt I would not be alive.
Yeah. Also, it's kind of confusing, right? It would be like 7 billion different opinions to listen to, because there would be not one the same as the other. And like how
that's how we live. The more people we ask their opinion on something, the more confused we get. Generally speaking, as human beings. And when we start to understand that, we could filter out, and we could come from a space of kindness and thank them. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this. But at the end of the day, if you are comfortable with a decision that you're going to make, or that you've made for yourself, because you understand that it's not coming from our thinking, but when we understand that it's coming from wisdom from within, the intuition is trusting your gut, as that's what we're taught. It's the same. We're speaking the same language here. That's all that matters. And even if it doesn't turn out exactly as we had hoped, it's okay, because behind that is a lesson, and behind the lesson is the growth. So even when things don't work out, that's when we get those aha moments. That's when the real epiphany comes, and we get to move forward because we learn.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is called The Spirituality of Imperfection. And it really speaks to the idea that if we'd all try to be a little bit less perfect, then we'd actually be a lot closer to perfection than we actually think we are, right? And it's kind of this stress, like, I gotta make everything right in my life and have the right decisions, and there can't be any mistakes or like whatever. And it's actually, I just gotta kind of follow where there's an opening, because there is a learning, like you just said. And it's not always straightforward. It's just not how life works and how growth works in itself. I don't believe that we can have an awakening and we can have growth and reach, higher vibrations and a higher level of consciousness, like you said before, without going through shadows and without going through imperfection and facing that. Like, it's not possible. Have you ever met anybody in the 12 steps who hasn't hit rock bottom, or anybody who came into an awakening who was just like happy before and then suddenly had like it just doesn't. It's usually a process for a realization of pain, or some kind of like that helps us grow. That's just the way life works.
There's been a lot of comments on the show tonight. I would like just to take a moment again to thank those people in the community that have joined us live. And one thing I'd like to ask of you, BB, is that if you can be so kind at some point in the next day, I know it's your holiday and all, but if you could maybe respond to some of the questions or comments, that would mean a lot to both myself and to Debbie, who unfortunately is under the weather and chose to do some self-care this evening and take care of herself. But she is here with us. And she said, what is the naked truth, BB? What does it mean for you? I know that I believe you shared a little bit. You touched on that at the beginning of the show. I think Debbie maybe had not jumped on yet, but could you just expand on that just for a minute or two?
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much, Debs. It's beautiful to be connected with you in an online kind of way. It's a good question. The naked truth. Yeah. So for me, it's It's about not having to wall up anymore, and just allow whatever wants to come in or see me kind of being able to see what is really there. So there's no more holding back, or there's no secret, there's no changing state. It's being as authentic and natural, like even right here. I mean, there's like, yeah, this the kind of the way I'm showing up here is the way I am. That's the truth. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, if I can paraphrase you, BB, it's removing the exterior false self. It's just being your most true, pure, authentic self, regardless of what other people think. What matters is that by you being who you are and stripping away all of the lies, all of the deceit, all of the mirages that aren't really true. You're just being who you are at your core, and you're allowing your true self, your soul, to really be.
That's
Okay?
it. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Someone love it. Yeah.
You know, that is what the awakening is. It's such a huge part of that, is that once we wake up and we understand that we don't have to please anyone, we don't have to fix anyone, we don't have to save anyone. We just have to save ourselves. We just have to fix ourselves and focus the attention on healing ourselves and allow everyone else to figure out how they choose to live their life, whether they choose to live it in pain and and addictions, or they choose to live it in the most authentic, pure way that they can, which is loving themselves. That's up to them. And at some point, when we determine that a relationship is too painful or too unhealthy for us to watch someone destroy themselves, whatever that looks like, then we can love them from a distance. In recovery work, they refer to that as detaching with love. Have you had to do that at all?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the um, yeah, that's nice. Actually, might be a good a good point right now. Speaking to that, and I'm noticing vulnerability in my voice. So it's an important day for me, as the 24th of December was the day my or well that I kind of found out that my beloved at that time 4 years ago passed away. So it was for me Christmas evening when I actually had that message. And the reason why or how it happened was because there was definitely, I would say, a higher level of consciousness for one moment that came into my awareness in that moment 4 years ago, where I realized that there was nothing I could do to heal him or fix him. And I really would have given my life, and I meant that. Like, I loved him so much. I would have given everything to help this human somehow feeling better about himself. And I realized it's just not going to make any difference. It's not going to make any change no matter what I do. Even if I go to any length, it's not going to help. And that's what I said to him. We kind of said goodbye about a week before, and I made my way back to rehab as I kind of realized the state that I was in and the help that I needed. And he didn't like that very much. And so, yeah, the one of the last things that I said to him was that I want to show up in his life as somebody who loves him so much that I'm not going to tell him anymore what to do. And I realized that because of his codependency, like he actually really wanted to die, and he had just like a lot of self-pleasing or like pleasing others going on, and he was living his life for other people all this time. And I'm like, I'm not gonna be one of them anymore. I just I want you to be you, and like whatever that means for you, this is kind of like how I want to show up. And I can't do it for you. I can't be happy for you. I can't heal it for you. I can invite you to come with me on this journey. I can invite you to hold your hand. There is a big invitation. My heart is always open, but I can't do it for you. And he chose to go. That was his decision. And yeah, it was the hardest thing in many ways that I've done, because I knew the consequence would be death, to say that to him. But on the other hand, it was for me the biggest act of truth and self-love, and that realization of everything that you just shared, as in, like, yeah, I sometimes love, I need to rephrase that. For me, it was the first time I realized what unconditional love means. And unconditional love isn't sacrifice or martyrdom, where I kind of like love somebody no matter what they do. Just, I mean, that's definitely kind of like how I felt towards him. But I realized that unconditional love begins from within. And that's kind of like the message also that Christ itself brings, and how Jesus talked about unconditional love. It's not possible to love anybody unconditionally if it's not something that comes from within. So if I'm hurting myself, and if I'm like walking across my own boundaries and around my own capacity and not honoring my life, like, how can that be love? There is nothing unconditional loving about that. And that was, I think, my awakening in some ways, into unconditional love. Yeah.
Wow. How does it feel in this moment right now? You just shared a really huge segment with me in this moment. And, I, I, I so I so honor you right now. Um, I remember sitting in the rooms and laying witness to some parents that lost a child while they were in the rooms with me. To their children lost their life to their own disease, either through taking their own life or just through an overdose. And I remember someone had said that, and I heard this more than once, and it just so resonated with me, is that when we are in a codependent relationship, we could love someone to death. And I know you know what I'm saying right now. Like, our behavior can kill other people. We help take other people out because our behavior is so toxic and so unhealthy. Not because we want to hurt them. It's not about wanting to hurt other people. It's just that, again, speaking for myself, I was so damaged. I didn't know any other way to behave. That was the only way I knew how to love. I didn't know how to love unconditionally. I never did. My love was always conditional. And so I just want you to know that I honor you right now, and I feel the pain, you know. Um, but I know that you've made tremendous progress because you're here. You're here, not just here. You're here tonight. You're here for yourself. You show up. You show up on social media. That means you're showing up in your life, and you show up and you hold yourself accountable, as you said, and you've acknowledged that. And we keep showing up because, I don't believe that we're ever done healing. I think that when we think we're done, it just means we got a whole lot more work that needs to be done. I don't think we're ever there. You know, I don't think that. I think the final destination is when we exit out of this lifetime. But up until that moment, it's the journey that matters. It's not the destination. You know, it's like I remember I was on a coaching session a couple of weeks ago with one of my mentors, Jay Shetty, and he was talking about just, you know, how it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. It's the lessons and the growth along the way. And we spend so much time focusing on, let's say, a New Year's resolution, and then we keep measuring the goal. And when we don't get there, or when we feel like we're behind, we either throw in a towel or we start to beat ourselves up and start to take on all those feelings of the less than feelings. And what was said that resonated with me in the moment was that it's so less important if we meet the goal as much as if we measure the growth, the progress that we're making along the path to reaching the goal. And what I have come to accept for myself is that the goal becomes way less important than when we take the time to measure the progress that we've made, whether it be small, minuscule, or it be something really big. It doesn't matter the size. What matters is that we just acknowledge that we are growing and we are learning and we are healing. We're healing our minds, our bodies, and our souls. And I know that we just probably went over a little bit, and if it's okay with you, I hope it's okay, because we lost a little bit of time because the internet went out. But I feel like there's just so much more that we can talk about. I have so many, not so many, but I have a few questions that I think would open up more conversation. And I would like to two things. One is invite you to come back on a show another time after the new year, where Debbie can join us in the studio and we can continue this conversation, because there is just so much more to what we've been talking about this evening.
I felt
Morning
too.
for you. Excuse me?
I felt that too, Jay. Yeah, definitely. It would be an honor to come back.
And secondly, if you would be so kind to maybe share real briefly two things. One is, where are you at in your healing journey today? Where are you right now for yourself? And if you could close us out with some parting words of hope for those that may be watching us on live or on replay, that may be suffering or struggling in pain this time of year. This is a very difficult time of year for some people. Holidays tend to flare up some old toxic memories and feelings and emotions. And so I'd like to invite you to do just that.
Beautiful. Right. So the first one was about my own process or progress, in a way, and where I'm at with my healing. Yeah, where would I say? Well, I'm in a lot of abundance, and there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of progress that happened on many, many levels. Like, definitely, I feel my connections are authentic and loving and real. And even with my family or in difficult situations, I'm able to just hold space and hold an open heart. Like, there's no need to wall up or defend, or just like let that in, which is huge. And regarding the hope part, I don't like the word hope so much. I like trust a lot more. Because hope is always like this vague thing, and trust makes it really solid. It's kind of like this. And regarding trust, like, you're on this, if you're watching this, like, trust the trusted process that you are in already, that you have come to this show for a reason. Like, there's an ability to connect, or an opportunity to connect with either of us. It's also trusting your own process, as in, it's not your own process. Yeah, as in, allow yourself to feel. And if it's pain right now, and if it's uncomfortable right now, the worst thing that I can do when I feel pain is resisting it. It's like not useful for me to not allow myself to feel pain because I think I shouldn't be feeling this, or it's uncomfortable, I don't want it. Like the more I can lean in and actually just have a good cry and not hide from that, the easier it becomes, the more free it is.
Mm.
Um, and share, like reach out to somebody and share. That's the trusting part. Trust other people that they can hold space for you. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. I love that. You hit on something that just reminded me of something I say quite often is that we have a choice today. We could either live in pain or we could feel the pain. Up until I got into recovery, I was living in pain.
Yeah.
And once I stepped in
Yeah.
and started to feel the pain, and for me, feeling the pain is where the healing began.
Yeah.
And so, what I have learned is that, as you said, feeling the pain is a healthy thing. The reason that I believe I got so sick physically and my physical well being was compromised so significantly was because I wasn't feeling it. I was holding it in, and then I was numbing it out with pharmaceuticals for 21 years. And it nearly killed me. And what I know today is that I love to feel it today. I am at peace with feeling all of my feelings, the feelings of joy and the feelings of darkness, the feelings of gratitude and the feelings of disappointment and sadness. And it's okay to feel them because what I've learned in my recovery and healing is that feelings, they come and go. They don't stay with us forever. And just as quickly as they come, we can release them, especially when we feel them and we allow ourselves to express what we're feeling
Yeah.
and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Trust
whole,
that you don't break to feel. It's like,
it's a whole new way to live.
oh, it's beautiful.
I just want to say one last thing. I want to just acknowledge this is that, when we got into the studio this evening and I let you know that Debbie was under the weather, and I gave you the choice of either staying and doing a show or postponing it. And you said, I'd like to do the show because there may be some people that, for the holidays and all, there may be some people that need to hear the message.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that. But I also want to acknowledge that you did share and you were very honest that today, today's date held a memory for you.
Mm,
It is the date that you found out that your significant other took his life, if I understood you correctly.
that's true. Yeah.
And so maybe on some subconscious level, um, you showed up for yourself tonight. You needed to do this show.
Yeah. There's a truth in that. Thank you for bringing that to my awareness. Mm. Yeah.
And that hits my soul right now.
Mm.
I It's okay, it's okay to be aware of this date and the fact that you showed up, because on some level, you know things don't happen by happenstance, and they don't happen ironically. This date, you didn't ask for today's day. I asked you if you'd be available tonight, not knowing that this was a date that you got some very tragic news that you learned of. It just, the universe shows up exactly, when we show up when we're supposed to. How do you feel right now? You okay?
I'm feeling really grateful. Yeah.
Mm.
Really connected and held. I think that's why it just feels really held. There's no.
Do you have plans for tonight? For today? Are you going to be
Yeah,
engaged in some event?
yeah, meeting some friends and then we'll go for dinner. So
Beautiful.
mm,
Well, I invite you to just be gentle with yourself tonight
mm,
in the next couple of days. You know, you've done this before, but you know, when we do what we're doing tonight, sometimes it leaves me with what I refer to as afterburn. You know,
right,
it
yeah,
sometimes it can take me out energy wise for hours or sometimes for a day or two. And so I allow myself to just accept that in that moment, that's my limitation, and I'm good with it. So just in a moment to just be aware that, you know, we don't know how our body and how we're going to respond to showing up for ourselves and sharing your authenticity and your vulnerability this evening like you did. And just be gentle with yourself and love yourself.
yeah. It feels like authenticity is actually giving me energy. Like this is for me work where I'll get so much back from this that it feels energized. Actually, it's the opposite.
Beautiful. That
But
does
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
That does happen. That happened with Bronny, who came on our show, and
yeah.
she and I speak now once a week. We get together. She's over in Sydney, Australia area, and we get together now offline once a week. We do a video coaching session together, and she is doing so well since she came on our show with Debbie and I. It's such a beautiful gift to watch her progress unfold since she's done the show, and so. Um, I'm really happy for you, and I'm very grateful that you came on tonight and that we moved forward with the show. Have a very very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Enjoy your holidays, and we'll be in touch. I'd like to keep in touch with you, and perhaps after the new year, have you back on the show in the studio.
That would be lovely. Yeah, let's keep in connection. Merry
Thank
Christmas to you and everybody watching.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a beautiful holiday and take care. Bye bye.